welcome to Mark Francois. It's a great pleasure to speak to you, Mark, and thanks for taking the time to speak to the New Conservative. First of all, on the government, the latest YouGov poll showed that while the Tories have made up some of their recent losses, they're still trading by about 6 percentage points in the polls. How stable is Boris in number 10 right now?
Well, we're all aware of what happened with Partygate, but we are now witnessing a war on the Central European landmass. It's not just a conflict, it's a war between Russia and the Ukraine. And I think the Prime Minister has showed great leadership in standing up to Putin. Quite rightly, what Russia has done is totally illegal. And any regime that is prepared to shell a maternity hospital deserves to be resisted. And I think the natural instinct of Conservatives under those circumstances is to rally to the colours. So I think the whole party across the political spectrum is rallying behind the Prime Minister. And I'm sure under these circumstances, that's the right thing to do.
Yes. Looking forward, though, do you think he'll be leading the Conservative Party into the next general election?
I suspect so, yes. I mean, I don't, none of us know what the Metropolitan Police report is going to say. When we get it, we will read it and we will digest its comments. But what we do know is that, Russia is trying to besiege Kyiv. And, the Prime Minister is rallying NATO European nations against that. And I think he deserves the support of every Conservative MP in doing it, quite frankly.
Absolutely. Mark, when I was researching for this interview, I heard that you once placed a bet on yourself at 200 to 1 to become leader of the party. Is that true?
No, it's not true. It was a throwaway remark. Someone said, oh, you're at 200 to 1 to be the next Tory leader. Yeah. And I said something like, oh, I might stick a tenner on it then. But I never actually made my way down to William Hill. Oh, so hopefully I can lay that one to rest now.
Okay, yeah. It's pretty good odds though, 200 to 1. I mean, might have put on a fiver myself.
That's very kind of you, but I would save your money for something more realistic. Okay. But bless you for the thought.
Right. On to Brexit, Mark. As one of the 28 Brexit Spartans who managed to vote against all 3 of the lamentable bills proposed by Theresa May, and that's something I think the nation really owes you a debt for, by the way. How happy are you with how Brexit's turning out so far?
Well, firstly, the reason we voted against the so-called withdrawal agreement in its form at that time was because actually it had precisely the opposite effect. It would, via the customs union, in effect, have kept us in the European Union forever. And when I and a number of my colleagues realised that, after a period of nearly 6 months of trying to negotiate with Number 10 in the run-up to the publication of the agreement, over what had happened at Chequers, we had a stark choice. We could either roll over and accept it or fight it. So we decided to fight. And I argue in the book, Spartan Victory, that if we hadn't have done that, if it hadn't been for the 28 of us, we would now be in the European Union and forever, because once you enter the customs union, you couldn't withdraw from it under the terms of the treaty without the consent of the other party. So there was a great deal at stake, basically.
There must have been a great deal of pressure leveraged, I imagine, because I know myself and many others were very disappointed by some prominent Brexiteers. I think Jacob Rees-Mogg even caved at the final reading, but 28 of you held out, and as I say, I think we really owe a debt to you for that. So thank you.
Well, in the book, I actually explain what happened.
Yeah.
I'm now the chairman of the European Research Group, but I was the vice chairman at the time. So, and the way I described it is that sometimes in the media, if you have a dispute between 2 conservatives, they describe it as a blue on blue. Yeah. Well, this was dark blue on dark blue. This was Brexiteer versus Brexiteer. We all desperately wanted to leave the European Union. There was no question about that. but we had, if you like, a dispute about the tactics that were most likely to achieve that aim. And I explain in the book in a lot of detail exactly how that came about, and the fact that people on both sides of that debate within the ERG, because they knew and respected each other, we managed to do it in quite a respectful way. But in the run up to the third meaningful vote on the 29th of March 2019, if it were a movie, that would be the culminating scene, that would be the denouement. It was extremely stressful, and I tried to give the reader some idea of what it felt to be like on the receiving end of all that pressure. It was not easy. Yes.
Well, I wanted to get round to the book, Mark. I was talking to my father-in-law just yesterday. I mentioned that I was going to speak to you, and he took down from his bookcase. He's already got the book, and he's halfway through.
Bless him.
He said he's really enjoying it. So I'll definitely be getting myself a copy. But could you just tell our readers your reason for writing the book and give us a little synopsis, if you would?
Well, it's called Spartan Victory. It's available online on Amazon, if you'll forgive the plug. And basically, it's the story of the battle for Brexit. I've called it Spartan Victory, the inside story of the battle for Brexit. And it concerns that period. Really, it's autobiographical, so it talks a bit about my earlier years. But the main focus of the book is the period between the EU referendum in 2016 and when we finally left on the 31st of January 2020. And it takes the reader inside Parliament, the backstairs and the corridors, and it explains what was going on week by week, month by month during that parliamentary trench warfare, and how we came very close to actually passing a treaty which was incredibly cleverly drafted to give the impression that we would leave the EU, but in actual fact would have kept us in the EU forever. So it explains to the reader in layman's English what was going on at the time. What was the Grieve Amendment? What was the Malthouse Compromise? What was the Cooper Bowles Letwin Bill? And so on and so forth. And the reason I wrote it was I wanted to put, if you like, the Brexiteer side of the argument on the record. A lot of books had been written about it, but almost exclusively from the Remainer perspective. And I hope this doesn't sound arrogant, historians years and decades to come will be arguing over this. This is the most fundamental event in British politics, arguably since the end of the Second World War. And I wanted to have a Brexiteer record of events publicly available so that if nothing else, it would give people something meaningful to argue about.
Absolutely. Yeah, it sounds great. As I say, Mark, I'm going to be getting myself a copy, and I've already heard great things, and it's selling rather well, I notice, on Amazon.
Well, yeah, it sold a little over 4,500 copies. And, people in the industry tell me that's quite good going for self-published work. The reason I self-published it in the end, Frank, was because I tried to go through a number of mainstream publishers. I got a literary agent, as many wannabe authors do. But to cut a long story short, he told me that the feedback that he'd had was that the manuscript was pretty good, but that because the industry was overwhelmingly Remain orientated, as he put it, these people just see the world differently from you, Mark. I wasn't going to be able to get a mainstream publisher to publish it. That's what happened. So in the end, I went to Amazon, who very kindly allowed me to self-publish it. And they're a kind of force for free speech in some respects in that sense.
Yeah.
So
they take a rather large slice of the pie for the privilege, I think, don't they? But nonetheless, they make it.
Well, they are that. I'm a capitalist. I'm sure those of you at the New Conservative are as well. So I don't decry them making some money out of it. But nonetheless, it made it possible to publish the book. I mean, I wrote it in lockdown. It was quite a lot of work.
Yeah.
And it also meant that, people could buy it very easily. 60% of all the books sold in the UK now are sold over Amazon, whether first-hand, as it were, or second-hand. And so it meant that anybody, even internationally, could buy it. I even had some buyers quite a lot from Australia for some reason, which is rather nice. So, and also since the book came out, I've had large numbers of emails, you know, from ordinary Jacks and Jills all over the UK saying, I bought your book and I never realised how close we actually came to being locked into the EU. And some of them have been kind enough to say some nice things about the stand that the Spartans took. So you know, it's not just for Brexiteers, but people who are of a Brexiteer disposition are probably going to enjoy reading it more than, you know, if you're a die-hard Remainer and reader of the New European.
Yes, absolutely. Mark, I did notice that your old sparring partner, Will Self, couldn't resist reviewing it. I don't know if that's something that's made its way to you yet.
Yes, the reviews have been really in two categories.
Yeah.
Brexiteers who've reviewed it have been very kind about it. Remainers who viewed it have been less kind about it. So I've had some, you know, Nigel Farage said, you know, thank God for the Spartans. The Spectator have been very nice. The Sunday Times have been pretty nice about it. But you know, Will Self was not so nice about it, and neither were Private Eye.
Yeah.
But you know, no surprise there. Then I do go into I go into the book to explain this famous, what became famous stare-off between myself and
I remember it.
How that came about. You know, you said something very rude to me just before we went live on air. And then as we kind of got into the meat of the discussion, he implied that everyone who had voted leave was a racist or a xenophobe. I very much objected to that. And then, you know, he sort of started trying to stare me out. Now, I grew up on an Essex council estate. Where I come from, that tactic just doesn't work. So we just stared at each other, I think, for about 15 seconds. And it sort of temporarily broke the internet. So, by explaining in detail, and I actually provide a transcript of exactly what was said, taken from the tape, so that people can read it for themselves and judge.
Oh, that's great. I'm looking forward to catching up with that. Mark, finally, I don't know if you've noticed, but the Labour Party seems to be having a bit of a problem with elementary biology. Can you tell them what a woman is?
Look, I think we all know what a woman is. And, you know, when you've even got J.K. Rowling, who is now laying into Keir Starmer over this, I think the Labour Party are completely tying themselves up in knots on this. And the longer that they remain obsessed on identity politics, as you might call it, and less bothered about issues like the cost of living and our security, I'm not sure that they're going to prosper. I'm not here to be Labour's grand strategist, but if they're looking to win back the so-called red wall seats that so many in the media seem to obsess about, I mean, there are other seats in the House of Commons, but if they're looking to win back the red wall seats, endlessly banging on about the politics of identity, I'm not sure is the right way to go about it. But at the end of the day, that's a problem for them.
Absolutely right. Yeah. Well, Mark, it's absolutely lovely talking to you. I would encourage all of our readers to go out and buy Spartan Victory and enjoy hearing the inside scoop on Brexit, exactly what happened. Thank you for taking your time to speak to us today.
Frank, I'm very grateful for the opportunity. Thank you very much, and good luck to you and your colleagues.
All the best, Mark. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.